stand by. Copy. Team 1, standing by. Breach, breach, breach.
Hi, I'm Courtney Wells. I work for Tactical Recovery. So we are an organization that has over 40 treatment centers, so a residential mental health and substance use treatment. We have 22 facilities that offer this high trauma track of treatment for veterans, military, and first responders. So I cover the whole Midwest, so I'm the liaison for Tactical Recovery. I'm also a veteran. I was also a first responder in the military, and this is my way to just support this population still. So my number is 660-888-2127. Thanks.
Awesome, thank you.
What's going on, everybody? My name is Clay Rojas, and I'm a counselor with The Forge. You can find us at theforge.org, and The Forge is a Christian nonprofit that provides counseling for men. We have an office in Overland Park, Kansas, as well as in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I am the regional director for the Tulsa, Oklahoma office, and we are focusing on working specifically with veterans and first responders. So if you're a veteran or first responder, whether you're in Tulsa or anywhere in the United States, we will work with you, every branch and every service. So we're looking forward to seeing you guys. Once again, you can get a hold of us at theforge.org, and thank you guys for tuning in.
Awesome, thank you.
Hi, my name's Todd. I'm with Copline, and Copline is a 24-hour, 365-day crisis hotline for law enforcement, their families, active, retired. We are national and international. If you call, you're going to be speaking to a cop, and if you do want to give us your location, we have vetted counselors throughout the nation.
Awesome, thank you.
Hey guys, so as many of you know, back on the 14th, we traveled up to Kansas City, Missouri. We had the 2025 safety conference up there. We were invited to come up as a vendor and never done anything like that before. So on this episode, just kind of wanted to talk a little bit with you about my experience up there. I mean, obviously, having never done anything like being a vendor or anything like that, it was a kind of a nervous situation. I even did a little small video while I was there about how it seems so much easier to face down, some deranged individual wanting to cause violence than it is to go put yourself out there and try to do something like that. But I got to say that, once there and after getting set up and everything like that, it was a pretty cool experience. Again, had no idea what I was doing. I've never gone out and done anything like that. So there was a lot of prep work. I actually wound up leaving some of the stuff that I was going to take with me, but I didn't realize that until I was almost 1,000 miles away from the house. And yes, we drove. It was 1,034 miles from Georgia to Kansas City, Missouri. We did it in one day. We left Friday morning, drove up, got there Friday evening, got something to eat, pretty much tried to finish prep work for going to the conference that night. Laid down, got some sleep, couldn't really sleep because of everything running through my head, and then that morning came and I actually woke up like an hour and a half before my alarm ever went off. So got up, kind of did what I needed to do, piled everything back into the car that needed to go back in the car, and then drove over to the conference. I was at the conference for maybe 12, 13 hours. Left back to the hotel and had just enough energy left in me to get something to eat. And I laid down on the bed for, just a couple of seconds, just to kind of relax a little bit, and I was already out. Next morning, we woke up at about 4 o'clock in the morning, Central Time, and the wife woke up and both looked at each other and was like, we might as well get it started, because it was another 1,034 miles back to Georgia. And that's what we did. We, packed our stuff up, cleaned up our room. I don't know if anybody else does that, but I really kind of clean up after ourselves, put any trash, big trash that we can, put that away, straighten things up, kind of pile the towels up in a in a central location so that, it's not going around, clean up any messes we leave behind. It's just kind of our nature. I don't know if anybody else does that. But try to make it easy as we can for room service or the cleaning crew when they come in after us. But we piled everything back in the car, and 1,034 miles back to the house. We left out that morning and got back Sunday evening, just in time enough to, kind of settle in and then the next day try to take to recover. So it was a lot. It was a lot packed into just a few days. But again, when I got to the venue and got everything in, the host of the event, Barry, I can't say enough about him. I've met him once when he was down here in Georgia doing a peer counseling training course. Barry was the instructor and the one doing the whole program. And that was the only time I met him. I introduced him to my podcast, and it really wasn't for any other reason than to, see what I was doing with the podcast and the website and everything like that, and just kind of get some direction, because again, I don't do those things. I'm just, some idiot standing here trying to make a difference in some way. And he really liked what we were doing here, and that's when he invited us. So that was literally the only time. And of course, we had corresponded through email, leading up to the conference. But when I got there that morning, and I got my little dolly or whatever you want to call it, and I'm wheeling everything in, Barry comes around the corner. He sees me, and without fail, he looks at me and he goes, "Big Sarge." Walks up, shakes my hand, gives me a hug. I mean, he treated me as if me and him had been friends for years. Like we had been friends the entire time, from the get-go. Recognized my face, knew my voice, remembered what we were doing with the podcast. And that was kind of a relaxing moment. It was odd that somebody would remember me after that one thing, but that brief moment. But it was relaxing. I kind of felt like, okay, maybe this can be okay. So went and registered, got my stuff that I needed to, and then was directed to where my section to set up my vendor booth was, and get there. And sure enough, there's a table set up for me right by an electrical outlet, and on it was a sign that had my name, the podcast, and to me that was something cool. I did bring that piece of paper home with me. To some, it may just be some stupid piece of paper, but to me, it was a very, very large step for what we're doing with Breach Your Mind and the mission that I've kind of put myself on, and that I'm trying to get others to go on with me. And those of you that have watched many of the episodes or listened to the podcast or interacted with the website or anything like that, you guys are going right along with me. So I kept that just a little takeaway for myself. But started getting set up, and there were other vendors all around me. People that had been on what I have kind of called the vendor circuit. They've been doing this for a very long time, and they're setting up their booths, and yeah, their booths were way more professional than mine. They had way better material. They had little giveaways and things like that to give out. And of course, I didn't have any of that, and I, had a small booth. I believe you can check the socials. You can kind of see what my little booth looked like, but it was nothing to the scale that they had. Of course, I really didn't have much to offer. Just me, putting out that we do this podcast. So it was intimidating being around people that have done this for years. And as luck would have it for me, my booth was right next to Copline. And those of you that know anything about it, it's a trauma line for law enforcement. It's other cops that are dedicated their time to helping other cops that are in need. And it was really kind of interesting for me because on the website under our support services, I've got them listed. They're one of the companies that I've got listed to provide services to individuals who are going through a mental health crisis at the moment. So it was interesting that my podcast would be right next to them. And what I found out was, even though I was new to the circuit, new to being a vendor or anything like that, there's a lot of other companies out there that are doing the work that our profession, our public safety, our service directed jobs need. They're out there. There are people that have gone through it, been through it, got the training, and offer services. So again, that little bit of uneasiness kind of set back in, because now I'm around people that actually provide services. And what does Breach Your Mind offer? I don't have services. I don't have treatment programs. I don't have different, getaways for public safety personnel to, kind of go and reset. I don't provide any of that. And so again, I went from starting to feel a little comfortable to looking around these other vendors and immediately thinking, yeah, I'm in the wrong place. I've got no place here because I don't offer anything. But fortunately for me, those other vendors would prove me wrong. I was like I said, I was sitting right next to a representative from Copline. I was sitting right across from a woman who's representing tactical recovery. Just off to my left in front of me was the Forge and the guys that were representing the Forge over there. Another vendor from 1033 Foundation came up and introduced herself to me, Dr. Amy Vaughn, with Dr. Amy Vaughn with Guiding Star Counseling. She came over and introduced herself to me. The guys from Reboot came over and introduced themselves to me. And I spent the majority of my day around these vendors, around these reps for these companies or these organizations that are providing services for military, public safety, everybody in the service group like that who experience trauma on such a high rate when compared to the average citizen. And every one of them come over and welcomed me and shared stories with me, and really kind of took the time out of their day to make me feel like, yeah, I was in the right spot. Breach Your Mind does have a place at the table when it comes to the combined mission that everybody's trying to accomplish. Frequently when I would tell people, tell these reps that I was talking to, I really kind of feel out of place. I don't have anything to offer people, this, that, and the other. What they wound up telling me is that what I provide, what Breach Your Mind provides, is more than, just a service. Breach Your Mind is essentially an attempt to be a bridge in the gap between those in the service professions and those that experience trauma and high stress on such a high rate to the treatment they need. And that reminded me exactly of what we set out to do when we shifted gears with the podcast, with Breach Your Mind, because that's what we want to do. We want to bridge that gap. We want to break down the stigma of mental health. It's unfortunate that so many people sit and think that because you have PTSD or you may, be fighting depression or that you have some addiction that you can't still be effective, because that's not true. That's not true at all. I have worked and work along some of the most professional and proficient individuals in this line of duty that there can be. And they fight some of the same demons as what everybody says, well, you can't have that and do that job. And to sit there, and especially when it comes time to do the work, if they didn't tell you that they were battling some kind of demon, you'd never know. And that's the biggest thing that I wish people could understand. And that's the biggest thing that we're trying to get done here. And that's what those vendors reminded me of. They reminded me that, someone that's there to try to bridge that gap and help get these individuals past the stigma to the treatment that they need to help enrich their lives and mend what's broken in them is what's needed. So it was really kind of empowering to be around these other vendors that are representing these other companies that are already established and have already helped thousands and thousands of service members and public safety workers and other people in high stress jobs. It was really sobering to have them tell me, no, you're exactly what's needed, because we do still fight the stigma. And while Breach Your Mind itself, at least at the moment, can't provide any kind of services, like treatment or anything like that, we can help bridge that gap. We can help get it out there into the world that mental health is not some issue that's debilitating and causes you to be ineffective. If anything, we need to embrace the fact that this exposure to traumas and exposure to the things that we go through, that they're normal, and that as long as we are dealing with it in a healthy manner, in a healthy way, we can all be stronger. And by doing that, it makes us stronger for the people that we serve. It makes us stronger for the community that we serve. So, it was truly an honor to sit there and speak with these individuals. And many of them, shared their story with me on how they wound up in the position that they are in, how they wound up going that path to working with a company that provides those services to individuals. And while I was hoping they would want to kind of do a live thing or something along those lines, many of them, weren't really ready to kind of go public with their story. And I respect that. I 100% respect that, because it's tough in itself to, one, acknowledge that something's not right. It's tough to start taking the steps to fix it, and it's even tougher to go public with it. And even though, our podcast, our company, our mission right now is still small, we put this stuff out everywhere. We're all over social media. We're on YouTube. We're on the airwaves with the podcast. So even though we may be a very small platform right now, it's still putting that out there in the ether. And that's still kind of intimidating for people. So even these individuals who are working for these companies or these organizations that are providing services for service members and public safety, they're still not personally ready to come public with their story. And I can respect it, because they at least acknowledge it. They're working to try to fix what's going on with them. And that's all that matters. So again, it was a very humbling experience. It was a very welcoming experience, and honestly, it really kind of fired things up for me. Because I left Kansas City, Missouri, with more than just some people who signed up for our email, just some people who entered our contest for the free giveaway from our shop. I left there with a renewed vigor and a renewed mission on what we're trying to do. Because having these individuals and having everybody that was at the conference, it's not just the vendors. I don't want to focus solely on the vendors, even though they made a huge part, because I spent most of my day around those individuals. But everyone there, there was a former SEAL team member who's started up his own ministry and was there doing the work. There's Barry there. There was everybody. There were so many people. It was like 500 and some odd people there, and everyone there had the same mission in mind, and everyone was so welcome to having somebody as small as our little podcast, our little company, there with the only mission to bridge the gap. So it was really humbling, and I was honored to have had the opportunity to go up to Kansas City. And while it was mentally and physically strenuous to, drive 2,000, almost 2,070 miles in a weekend, and then go do something that I'd never done before. That was mentally and physically strenuous for me. It gave a new fire, or, stoke the flame on what we've already got going here. And in response to that, I've got some new ideas for what we're going to be doing with Breach Your Mind. One of those things that I'm going to do, and I'm going to, unfortunately, I'm going to have to read a little bit, but I do want to talk about some of these companies or organizations that took the time to spend most of their day with me, either by choice or just because we were in the same vicinity and they didn't like silence. Regardless, I do want to highlight them. I'm not going to go too much into what they do, because my goal, and I've already spoke with a couple of them and they're on board with it, is I plan to invite them onto the podcast, and I want them to talk about what they do, because what they're doing is tremendous. What they're doing is something that, at least here in Southeast Georgia, other side from Copline, I didn't know any of these other ones existed. I didn't know they were out there. I didn't know there was help like that. And just by simply going onto the internet and Googling, public safety, mental health, or anything like that, you're going to get flooded with all these different companies, all these different programs. And I'm not trying to turn anybody away from any of those, because by all means, go do what you need to do. But the reason I'm highlighting these is because I didn't know all of them existed. And I unfortunately get lost in the flood of information when I try to just Google the things. So spending as much time as I did around them and having them share their stories with me, whether it was their personal story or people that they were dealing with, it was truly inspiring to see the work they were doing. And because of that, I want to have them on and give them the opportunity to help make their organizations, help make their companies more well known. Even if we are just something small, and we may only get 12 downloads per podcast episode, but at least it's some exposure. It's an attempt to get more attention to what these guys and girls, guys, men, women. It's at least some kind of an attempt to get the needed attention to what they're doing. So in coming episodes, we are going to have interviews with these guys, Clay, Dr. Vaughn, the group from Scott from Reboot. We're going to get them on here, and I want to have them, talk to us about what's going on with their company, what's going on with their organizations. So that's the goal. That's what we're going to be doing. But just real quick, I just kind of want to go over them. I apologize that I'm going to be reading from, what I had typed out, but it's too much for me to try to remember all in one. So one of them is Reboot, a 12-week peer-led course that's built for first responders and their families. It's faith-based, it's practical, and focused on healing from trauma. Not through therapy, but through community, conversation, and purpose-driven tools. The folks there at Reboot, it's a different approach to helping public safety, military. It started out, if I remember correctly, it started out from combat vets who wanted to do something to help one another, and then they quickly realized that it wasn't just combat vets and service members that were dealing with these things, that it was the public safety community as well. So that's what, caused them to branch out to that. And because of that, they are very vocal about what they do at Reboot and what they can offer. So, that was the guys over there were very were very informational, and very welcoming to what we're trying to do. The next one was the Forge. There was two guys from the Forge. I apologize to the second gentleman. I don't remember his name off the top of my head, but I spent a lot of time talking with Clay, who works with the Forge, and what they do at the Forge is, again, it's a faith-based treatment. It does focus primarily on men's mental health. Excuse me. It does focus primarily on men's mental health, but like most, it encourages the participation and everything of the spouses of the women in those men's lives, the family in those men's lives. So it's a faith-based treatment. It's a faith-driven program focused on spiritual growth and character formation. It's less about trauma recovery and more about building inner strength and moral clarity through guided biblical content and small group connections. So I've never done anything like that, and while I am a faithful person, I'm not a religious person. So it was interesting talking with those guys, because in a lot of people's minds, when you're talking about groups and organizations that are faith-based, unfortunately, there's a stigma that goes along with it, that you're expecting them to browbeat you with whatever faith-based system they're using. And they didn't do that. The guys with Reboot, they didn't do it. The guys with the Forge, they didn't do it. They just want you to know that that's where they're coming from. They're coming from a faith-based treatment process, and that's not a bad thing. Even in a lot of your small groups like AA and things like that, it will, maybe it's the wrong way to put it, and I've never attended, so I don't want to offend anybody that has. But even there, if I'm not mistaken, you're encouraged to believe in a higher power, whether it's a deity, whether it's a religion. You're encouraged to believe in a higher power, something stronger and more powerful than yourself, to help you conquer your addictions. And this is no different. These are just faith-based systems that are encouraging you to open up your mind to that process. Tactical recovery, that was another one. She sat right across from me. Her and I spent a lot of time of the day talking, and it was interesting to hear the things that tactical recovery was doing. If I'm not mistaken, they're a part of Summit Behavioral Health. Tactical recovery is one of their programs, and she specifically worked with veterans and the VA, and getting service members to treatment facilities, whether inpatient or outpatient. She works with getting that process going and getting the VA to help work with that process. Very relaxed person, very knowledgeable about what she was doing and her company, or the company's goals and mission, and her goal and mission. So tactical recovery provides trauma-informed addiction and mental health treatment, specifically for veterans and first responders. It's clinical, culturally competent, and accepts VA benefits, offering detox, inpatient, and long-term recovery support. So again, veterans and public safety. So it's meant for all of us. And I'm going to be stoked to have her on here talking about what they do there. Then we've got Copline, and I've talked about Copline in the past on a couple of different episodes. It's featured on our website for the crisis support line. Copline's a 24/7 confidential peer support line answered by retired officers. There's no judgment, no paperwork, and it's just someone who's been there ready to listen when the job gets heavy. So it's literally a trauma line for cops when the weight of what we deal with and what we go through gets to be too much. Whether it's you finally realizing and have that break, or whether it's, an incident that happens. You've got a bunch of cops that have been there, seen that, done it, got the t-shirt. that are willing to sit there and have that conversation with you. And if you need treatment, they can help get you to treatment. They've got facilities that they work with. They've got vetted partners that they can offer help with. All the person has to do, the patient, whatever you want to call them, all they have to do is tell them where they are, and they've got vetted resources that they can direct that person to and help get in contact with. So the guys and the women over at Copline, obviously coming from that profession, that's something that's huge, because it's awfully hard for us at times to talk with the people we work with, talk with our command staff about the things we might be going through. So having that anonymous resource that you can do those things, and it's not something that they're going to report back to your agency. So if you're somebody that's dealing with it, and if you're somebody that's dealing with a mental health crisis, and you're worried that maybe they're going to report it back to your admin or your agency or something like that, that's not the case. It's not the case at all. So again, it's a great organization, and they provide a very, very valuable service to those of us in the job. There was Dr. Amy Vaughn. Dr. Amy Vaughn, I didn't know her company off the top of my head, because it was more me talking with her and what she does with peer support. But she has Guiding Star Counseling. It's led by Dr. Amy Vaughn, and she specializes in trauma recovery for first responders and veterans, from EMDR to peer team counseling. It's rooted in experience and committed to getting to the root of the pain, not just the symptoms. Dr. Vaughn, I believe, just finished publishing a peer support counselor or peer support manual on how to do peer support. And I'm not going to try to butcher what her book was about. I'm going to ask her to come onto the podcast and pitch her peer support and everything that she does herself. But Dr. Vaughn was very forthcoming and willing to have that conversation and talk about peer support and talk about mental health and talk about the impact that that has on those of us in the service profession, whether it's being a service member of the military, or whether it's being in public safety, or any of those other high stress positions. Dr. Vaughn has an understanding in that, and obviously by saying doctor, she's got some education on it too. So she's got the experience, and they're at Guiding Star Counseling. That's something that they do. They push that forward, and she's really passionate about doing peer support. So I'm going to ask Dr. Vaughn if she's willing to come on, and based on the conversation that we had face to face, I don't see as to where she would say no, because it's a chance to continue the mission that we're all obviously working toward. And one final organization that I had the honor to sit next to and speak with throughout the day was the 1033 Foundation. And for those of you who don't know, 1033 is a 10 code that's generally used in public safety, and it's essentially a code saying, I need help. So they formed the organization over a code that's literally meant, hey, I need help. It's a nonprofit organization run by first responders, offering peer support, crisis response, and mental health training nationwide. They show up when others don't, and with no agenda other than helping their own. I don't know what else you could expect from a company that literally based their name off of a code that says I need help. They've been there, done that, like those in Copline and most of these organizations, Reboot, all of them. They've been there, they've done that. They have the T-shirt, and they've got the scars that go along with it. And that's what 1033 does. They're there for those that do that. So I'm going to be reaching out to them. I'm going to see about getting them on here and giving them the opportunity to tell our small audience, more about what they do. Because if nothing else, if I can help get these services out, get these services more well known. Like I said, down here in our area, I've done this job for 19 years. And aside from Copline, I'd never heard of any of these other ones. Didn't know they existed. Anytime I went to Google and searched on Google for different resources that I could try to provide people or refer people to, none of these ever came up. They didn't, you know. And that's got a lot to do with the way the internet works and algorithms and a bunch of stuff that's way more technically advanced than I'll ever understand or want to. So if it gets it out there more, if it makes it more well known, and it can get those of us that do the work to try to help save other people, if it gets them the help that they need so that they can keep doing the job that's their passion, then that's what we're going to do. So again, I just wanted to take this moment to kind of talk about that experience and really highlight the number of companies and organizations out there are far more than what I ever thought. It really opened that door for me to realize, yeah, there is more help out there than what we think. And, you know, for those of you that saw the interview with Jennifer a while back, one of the things Jennifer talked about was, you know, she was going for therapy, and her therapist just couldn't believe the stories she was telling them. You know, they weren't prepared. They weren't experienced in being trauma informed for public safety. You know, she worked for the coroner's office. She wasn't the therapist she was going to were not prepared for that type of trauma, which only traumatized her further and set her back even further. So getting this information out there, getting these companies and these organizations out there to help guide those of us in the profession, those of us in the service, to resources for trauma-informed treatment, that's huge. That's huge. And finding that out myself was a big empowering moment. So I'm going to do what I can to help get these services out there. And whether you reach out to the podcast, reach out to me personally, whether you do that or not, if the information still gets out there and you get help, and in any small way what we're doing here with Breach Your Mind helped, that's a win. And it makes everything that we're doing, everything that we're going through to try to do this mission, it makes it all worth it. You know, I've said before about the young man who told me how I helped him. And while I didn't recognize him, he reminded me of what happened. And hearing that one affirmation that what I was doing, you know, helped him, it made so much more of the crap that we go through worth it. It made so much of the trauma that I went through in my own life and in the trauma that we went through in our profession, in my profession, it made it worth it. Because there's a young man alive today because of something that I said to him and it stuck. So if that's what it takes with Breach Your Mind, for us to go through the mud, get the scars, take the losses, and take the hits just to save one, it makes it worth it. So anyway, I won't keep droning on about this one. I just really wanted to make this episode, and I really wanted to get those companies out there, those organizations, because I do plan on having them on the podcast. I do plan on having them come on here and tell us more about what they do, what they offer, and how they can be reached. And I just really wanted to get that out there. It was weighing on me to get it out there. I wanted to get out there sooner, but between traveling, everything we did to get ready, and then getting back to work, you know, the brain just kind of left me. So we're getting it out there now, and provided everything goes well with the recording, we're going to get this episode out there. So also, one last thing before I wrap up, guys, I want to tell you on something that's coming. I'm going to start a new series. There's be a new series through the podcast. I don't know the posting schedule just yet. As soon as I do know the posting schedule, I'll let you know. But I am going to do a new series focused on peer support, and it's going to be called Standing in the Gap. So, and of course, that's us trying to be peer support counselors. Those of us that are, whether you're trying to be a certified peer support counselor or not, if you're just somebody that other people come to talk about when things get heavy for them, this series is for all of us. And it's called Standing in the Gap, and that's because that's what we do. We stand in the gap between the trauma and the treatment. And I want to do that series to kind of help get all of us on the same page and get us better. It's not a training series. It's not a lecture. It's nothing like that. But it's going to be something that's interesting, and I think will help broaden the spectrum of peer support. Because if we can get more of us on board, that's just more people watching our sixes, and that's what we need. Okay, so stand by, watch out for that one. As always, the shameless plug. Feel free to visit the website breachyourmind.com. Go through there, see if there's anything in there that grabs your attention. As always, if you want to help support the podcast, help support the mission, we do have the shop on there. Please understand that the shop is not something that we are using to try to make money. It's not something that we're using to try to turn into some kind of $1 million t-shirt company or something like that. That's not the goal of the shop at all. The goal of the shop is literally just to try to help support the mission of Breach Your Mind. So if you feel it in your heart, I did something as simple as a sticker. We've made up a sticker and posted it out on there. So if you feel it in your heart to try to help support the mission, try to help support what we're doing with Breach Your Mind, visit the shop. And even if you don't want to do that financially to help with that way, please help share any of the stuff on our social medias. Help share the podcast. Help share the YouTube episodes and the podcast episodes. All you got to do is like, share, and interact with those things. It takes you no time at all, and it costs you nothing for that. So, guys, if you want to help contribute, you want to help broaden our reach, that's one way you can do it, okay? So in the meantime, I appreciate your time. I appreciate your effort. Stay safe. Catch you on the next one.